Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. The 2 years of the Russia-Ukraine war has changed the security calculus of Europe. And Moscow has used the Ukrainian battlefield to test out some of its most advanced weapon systems. First announced by Vladimir Putin in March 2018, Russia's strategic weapons, some of which that have been used on the battlefield, have been in a direct head-to-head contest with the best weapons that NATO has managed to field against the Russian war machine. In the last 2 years, the fortunes on the battlefield have swung on more than one occasion. Russia's invasion of Ukraine was originally meant to be over in 3 days, but it has now entered into its third year. The geopolitical realities on the ground have also changed. Ukraine is increasingly fighting without Western military assistance. There are loud promises that the NATO military alliance would not let Ukraine sink. And the other reason why military assistance from the United States is stuck is due to internal politics in the United States. More than any other reason, wars on the battlefield are decided on the basis of technological superiority. And it is here that Russia appears to have gained the upper hand. Our next report gets you the details. This is the reality of war. For leaders who sit in air-conditioned rooms and make loud statements, this is the desperate struggle of the battlefield to survive longer than your enemy. This dramatic footage that was released by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry shows a convoy of Russian tanks being ambushed and destroyed on the battlefield. But this video depicts just one incident of the battlefield, as the larger picture of the war that is playing out at the moment for Ukraine is very different. This is the scale of the devastation that has been wreaked on Ukraine. City after Ukrainian city, town after town has been depopulated and the buildings here reduced to empty burnt-out shells. Can you imagine what this Ukrainian city must have looked like before the onslaught by the Russians? In the city of Avdiivka, that was most recently captured by Moscow, the Russian soldiers are carrying out mopping operations. The NATO weapons left behind by the fleeing Ukrainian soldiers are being gathered up. The mood in Kiev has soured. The heroic resistance against the Russian onslaught is now giving way to a bitter sense of betrayal. The Ukrainian forces are outgunned and outnumbered. Vyacheslav, a Ukrainian artillery commander stationed at Chasiv Yar in the Donetsk region, will give you a sense of what is happening on the battlefield.
We lack ammunition. There is very little of it. Too few is given to us. We often look at the video feeds of our drone pilots. They show us pictures from the front line. A lot of Russians try to attack our positions. If we had more ammunition, we could have stopped them. Since we lack ammunition, we have nothing to work with. We see the target, we can hit it, but we have nothing to do it with.
For the Ukrainians, everything hinges on American military assistance, and it is precisely this which doesn't appear to be forthcoming.
Look, the Ukrainian people have fought so bravely and heroically. They put so much on the line. And the idea that now, when they're running out of ammunition, we walk away, I find it absurd. I find it unethical. I find it just contrary to everything we are as a country. So I'm going to fight till we get them the ammunition they need and the capacity they need to defend themselves. Thank you very much.
So is it just American politics that has stopped more US aid for Ukraine? According to military experts, that may not be the complete truth. The last 2 years of the offensives and the counteroffensives that have played out on the battlefield point to a glaring reality that the Western leaders are not willing to publicly admit. In a contest of conventional weapons, Russia appears to have gained an upper hand that at this moment has made a Ukrainian pushback to recover its lost territories is almost impossible. Russia has been using AI-powered missiles to autonomously detect, track and destroy Ukrainian targets. And all this without any human involvement and direction. Russia has also extensively used the Kinzhal hypersonic missiles to strike targets even when they've been guarded by some of the most advanced Western anti-air defense systems such as the Patriot missiles. In September 2023, Russia deployed its most advanced nuclear missile, the Satan II, for combat, with Putin saying that this missile would make all Russian adversaries think twice before staging any attack on Russia. On the 13th of February this year, Russia used its Zircon hypersonic missile for a strike on Kiev. On this vehicle that can trigger nuclear tsunamis which can devastate entire coastlines. Called the Poseidon, the West is nothing that is remotely analogous to this. So while the West, on the second anniversary of the Ukraine war, is scrambling to put together enough resources to back Ukraine, Vladimir Putin was busy showing off Russia's new Tu-160M nuclear-capable strategic bomber. The giant swing plane that has been codenamed the Blackjacks by NATO is a modernized version of the Cold War-era nuclear bomber of the Soviet Union. If you want peace, then prepare for war is a military maxim that was put forth by the 4th century Roman military expert Flavius Vegetius Renatus. And Russia under Putin appears to be busy building its next generation of weapons, while the West has little clarity on its strategy on how to proceed in the Ukraine war. Yemen's Houthis announced on the 22nd of February that they are banning vessels linked to Israel, the United States and the United Kingdom from the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea. To this effect, formal notices of the ban were sent by Houthis Humanitarian Operations Coordination Center to shipping insurers and firms operating in the region. In addition to this, they also pledged to use submarine drones against US ships, continuing and further escalating their attacks amidst the Israel-Gaza war. On the 19th of February, an American MQ-9 Reaper drone was shot down by the Houthis using a surface-to-air missile. Now, this is the second instance of an MQ-9 Reaper drone being shot down by the Houthis since the Israel-Gaza war erupted on the 7th of October. So how potent is the threat posed by the Houthis, and who is supplying the Houthis with such sophisticated weaponry? Our next report gets you the details.
Following the start of the Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip last October, the Iran-aligned Houthis started firing drones and missiles towards Israel, most of which were intercepted. Changing tactics in November, they started targeting Israeli-owned, flagged or operated ships or ships heading to the Israeli ports. Consequently, several shipping companies redirected their vessels around the southern tip of Africa, adding a further 3,000 to 3,500 nautical miles to their journeys, further delaying delivery times and incurring more costs. Almost 15% of global seaborne trade usually passes through this shortest shipping route between Europe and Asia. In response, the US and UK have carried out multiple rounds of airstrikes on the Houthi targets in Yemen. The United States, on the 17th of January, redesignated the Houthis a terrorist group. But the Houthis have remained defiant and the attacks on vessels have persisted. The attacks, Houthis say, are in solidarity with the Palestinians and in response to Israel's military operations in Gaza, which have killed almost 30,000 Gazans in 4 months. On Thursday, in 2 notices issued by the Houthis, they outlined a formalized ban in the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea. The ban affects vessels wholly or partially owned by Israeli, American and British individuals or entities, as well as those sailing under their flags. Announcing an escalation in these attacks, Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi also said the group had introduced submarine weapons in their attacks.
We will continue with our operations and move towards an escalation. The operations aimed at supporting Gaza and standing in solidarity with the oppressed Palestinian people, as well as targeting Israeli targets in the occupied territories, have reached a total of 138 rockets. The supporting track for Gaza and operations in the Red Sea, Arabian Sea, Gulf of Aden, and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait are also ongoing. In these operations, we are also heading towards an escalation in both intensity and type. This involves activating missiles, drones, and military boats, and the introduction of submarines, which is concerning for the enemy. The targeted ships in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea have reached 48 vessels. 48 ships have been targeted, which is a very significant number.
The same day, the US military's Central Command, or CENTCOM, said it conducted 4 self-defense raids against the Houthis, destroying 7 anti-ship cruise missiles, a mobile ballistic missile launcher, and an unmanned underwater drone. Israel's military also intercepted a target in the area of Red Sea after sirens blared, warning of incoming rockets and missiles in the southern tourist town of Eilat. Americans have accused Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of providing the Houthis with a growing arsenal of sophisticated weapons and training. US President Joe Biden has acknowledged that the American and British bombardment has so far failed in its objective of stopping attacks by the Houthis. With the announcement of the ban, the Houthis have underscored their defiance. The question now is, can America, when push comes to shove, defeat the Houthis, and will this fallout of the Israel-Hamas war end up destabilizing the Middle East?
On the 20th of February, the United Nations Security Council convened for an emergency meeting. The agenda of the meeting was the rapidly deteriorating security situation in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, where fighting between the government forces and the M23 rebels has intensified. At the meeting, the United States issued a warning to both Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo that they must walk back from the brink of war. Kinshasa, the United Nations and the Western nations have said that Kigali is actually supporting the rebels in a bid to control the vast mineral resources in the region, a charge that's been refuted by Kigali. Our next report gets you all the details.
The Democratic Republic of the Congo, formerly known as Zaire, is Africa's second largest country. Though rich in valuable mineral resources, it ranks among the 5 poorest nations in the world. Compounding the problem for the impoverished nation is the insurgency in its east, which it has been battling for decades. It is estimated that more than 120 rebel groups are fighting with national armed forces for power, land, and valuable mineral resources. Preeminent among these is M23, a largely Tutsi rebel group linked with the neighboring Rwanda, though Kigali has repeatedly denied the charge. After several months of relative calm, intense fighting resumed last month around the city of Goma, the capital of the North Kivu province. At least 35 people have been killed and hundreds wounded in these clashes. Desperate civilians on foot, on motorbikes or in cars moved from the towns and villages around Goma to take refuge in the city. Thousands of civilians have been caught in the crossfire and are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. On Tuesday, UN humanitarian agencies issued an appeal for financial aid to address the grave food insecurity situation.
So in terms of financing, as I said, we are asking for 2.6 billion, and this is to provide what we call multi-sectoral assistance to 8.7 million people. The first ticket item on the list is food security because of that mega food insecurity situation in the conflict zone of the DRC. So 1.2 billion out of the 2.6 is going to food security.
More than 1 million people are now in and around Goma after fleeing the fighting. The Congolese president, Felix Tshisekedi, who was re-elected in December, has struggled to bring an end to the cycle of violence despite his promises. Strongly condemning the escalating violence, the United States asked the M23 backers in Rwanda to remove sophisticated surface-to-air missiles that are threatening lives in the Congo's east. And in a stern warning, the United States urged both parties to explore the path of regional diplomatic efforts for lasting peace.
Rwanda and the DRC must walk back from the brink of war. Parties to the conflict and regional actors should immediately resume the Nairobi and Luanda processes. These regional diplomatic efforts, not military conflict, are the only path toward a negotiated solution and sustainable peace.
Will Rwanda pay heed to these warnings and end all support for M23 rebels and pull its troops from Democratic Republic of Congo? Well, millions of lives are at stake and dependent on Rwanda's next move.
At least 26 combatants and an unconfirmed number of bystanders were killed in a tribal clash in Papua New Guinea's highlands on the 18th of February. Some police and cabinet officials put the death toll anywhere from 49 to 64, taking into account the fact that bodies are still being recovered. The military had in fact deployed as many as about 100 troops to the area, but they remained woefully outnumbered, outgunned and ineffective. The incident in the early hours of Sunday put an escalating internal security problem under the lens in the South Pacific island nation. Recently, the strategically vital island nation has garnered close military attention from the rival powers, that is the United States and China. Our next report gets you more details.
Papua New Guinea is a diverse, developing, mostly rural nation of subsistence farmers. An Australian colony prior to gaining independence in 1975, the country is rich in resources including gold, nickel and natural gas. As many as 839 languages are known to exist here, making it one of the most linguistically diverse nations in the world. Strategically significant, it is the most populous nation in South Pacific after Australia with about 10 million people. Historically, however, it has struggled to contain escalating tribal violence and civil unrest in remote regions. Tribal warfare in Papua New Guinea's highlands is a centuries-old affair, which again came to the fore on the 18th of February with dozens of bloodied bodies found along a remote stretch of road in the Inga province. Prime Minister James Marape expressed deep concern and called on warring tribes to lay down their arms.
Great concern for what is happening in Inga province. To lose one life, let alone many lives, does not evade our consciousness and our concern. As Prime Minister, I'm deeply moved by this. I'm very, very concerned. I'm very, very angry. I want to relate to our youths who are holding guns up there. People outside who are sponsoring this will not be there to answer to you when you either die or when you face police and you respond to the rule of law.
Reportedly, a tribe, their allies and mercenaries were on their way to attack a neighboring tribe when they were ambushed early Sunday morning. The incident occurred near the village of Wape Namada, which is about 600 kilometers northwest of the capital, Port Moresby. Police said the gunman had used a veritable armory, including SLR, AK-47, M4, AR-15 and M16 rifles, as well as pump-action shotguns and homemade firearms. Of late, automatic weapons and an influx of mercenaries have made these clashes between clans a far more deadly affair. How prepared are the police and security officials in Papua New Guinea to tackle these challenges?
Government don't take joy in lawlessness. Every moment life is being lost or lawlessness happening in our country, it causes grief to government in the first instance. There'll be a time when police capacity is stepped up. At the moment, we have 500 personnel trained as we speak. We've already signaled to Bomana training, not to be seasonal training, but training will go on every time. Every time, and when police discipline requires that some go out, new officers come in.
Last month as well, on the 10th of January, the island nation had descended into lawlessness amid a festering pay dispute. At least 15 people were killed in riots in the two biggest cities of Port Moresby and Lae as the crowds looted and burned shops. The scale of destruction was unprecedented in the past 50 years, with local newspapers dubbing it as the city's darkest day. Two major incidents in two successive months have highlighted the nation's huge internal security issues. It would be interesting to see how the island nation, located in a strategically significant part of South Pacific, deals with these challenges at a time when it is being courted by the United States, its ally Australia and China seeking closer ties.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.